Welcome to today's episode of True Love Diaries. We always want to believe that every love story is destined for a beautiful ending, but the realities of life rarely mirror fairy tales. Some journeys begin with a heart full of hope and dreams, only to leave behind an echoing emptiness and a harsh reality to face alone. Today, we are sharing a profoundly moving true story sent to us by a young woman from Bangladesh who was requested to keep her name and identity strictly confidential. Driven by empathy, she fought her own family to marry a divorced man, hoping to heal his broken spirit. She genuinely believed that someone who had suffered a massive heartbreak would cherish a new relationship even more, but she had no idea of the cruel fate that awaited her. It is a sobering look at how a person's life can be poised over something as superficial as physical appearance. Let's listen to her untold story in her own words. It all started towards the end of 2022. I was in my third year of university, pursuing my bachelor's degree. As the eldest child of a businessman, my parents were already following our traditional norms and actively looking for a suitable match for my marriage. Around that time, we crossed paths on a Facebook matrimony group, a digital matchmaking community. He was looking for a life partner, and so was I. That's how our initial connection was made. Soon we moved our conversation to Facebook Messenger and started talking regularly. Early on, we exchanged our backgrounds. He was working in a reputable official position at one of the most prestigious public universities in Bangladesh, an institution everyone in the country knows. His family was rooted in Old Dhaka, a historic and bustling part of the capital, while my hometown was in Mymensingh, a district quite a distance away. Right from the beginning, he was transparent about another detail. He was about 13 years older than me. Since our very first conversation was centered around marriage, he chose to be completely honest with me. He disclosed that he had been married before, but it had ended in a divorce. When I naturally asked about the reason behind the divorce, he became quite emotional. He confided in me that his ex-wife had been involved in an extramarital affair and eventually left him for her boyfriend. He explained how this betrayal had left him in severe emotional trauma for a long time. For years, he thought he would never marry again. But since life has to move forward, he finally decided to give it another chance. Shortly after sharing this, he proposed to me. Hearing his past put me in a deep dilemma. I was an unmarried young woman, and he was a divorced man. I spent days wondering if marrying him would be the right decision for my future. However, as we kept talking, his nature began to win me over. He was incredibly caring. Despite his busy schedule, he invested most of his day in me, constantly checking up on me. To get a second opinion, I shared everything with an older sister figure of mine. She immediately strongly advised against it. She questioned why an unmarried girl like me would choose to marry a divorced man. She was looking at it from a conventional societal perspective. But my outlook was different. I opened up to my family about him. I explained that while he had a painful past, he was a genuinely good person. I genuinely believed that someone who had suffered such a massive heartbreak would value a new relationship even more and would cherish me deeply. This empathy turned into a strong emotional attachment. Over time, I grew so fond of him that I decided he was the one I wanted to marry. Eventually, he informed his family about us to see how we could take things forward traditionally. After learning about me, his mother called me over the phone. She liked my demeanor, and soon, his family expressed their desire to visit our home in Mymensingh to meet my family and see me in person. Even though his family had expressed interest in visiting, my mother was completely against the marriage at first. As a mother, she had deep reservations about marrying her unmarried daughter to a divorced man. But seeing my stubbornness and how much I wanted this, she finally gave in. She even convinced my father, saying, "They want to visit. Let them come and see her." A visit doesn't mean the marriage is finalized. So, His family traveled from Dhaka to our home in Mymensingh. They met me in person and liked me. However, after they returned to Dhaka, they suddenly went completely silent. No phone calls, no updates. Because I had already developed feelings for him, this sudden silence made me incredibly upset and anxious. Eventually, I tried to accept the situation, thinking that perhaps this wasn't meant to be. I sent him a final message saying, "It seems your mother didn't like me. They're probably looking for someone for you in Dhaka. You should marry whoever they choose." With that, I stopped talking to him. My family also advised me to block him, so I completely cut off all communication. 6 months passed like this with absolutely no contact. But out of nowhere, he reached out to me again. He told me that during those 6 months, his family had shown him around 20 different prospects. But he couldn't bring himself to say yes to anyone. He told me his heart was still set on me, and he only wanted to marry me. I told him bluntly that telling me all this was useless now. There was no point in reopening a chapter that was already closed, but he was persistent. He insisted, "I will marry you, no matter what it takes." He began trying to win over my family. He started calling my maternal grandmother and other relatives, trying his best to build a good relationship with everyone. Seeing his persistence, my family told him to bring his parents over again. But his family wasn't willing to come back initially. To convince them, he put immense pressure on his parents, even going as far as threatening that he would die if he couldn't marry me. Driven by their son's desperation, his mother finally called my mother. She practically begged my mom, saying, "Please give your daughter to our family." My son is a very good man. He prays 5 times a day and keeps voluntary fasts. Hearing his mother's emotional appeal, my mom's heart softened and she finally agreed. A wedding date was then fixed. To finalize the arrangements, a group of 8 to 9 members from our family, including my maternal uncles, went to visit their house in Dhaka. My mother knew how desperate I was. She knew I had my heart set on him. So, solely for my happiness, she had told my uncles before they left, "Just go and finalize everything. I am going to marry my daughter into that family." During that meeting at their house in Dhaka, his family made one tradition very clear. They mentioned that according to the customs of old Dhaka, the bride's family is expected to provide certain gifts for the groom's side. Wanting to keep things smooth, my family agreed to their terms and promised to provide all the necessary furniture and household items for us. With all arrangements finalized, they arrived at our home in Mymensingh on September 15, 2023, and our wedding took place. My family gifted us furniture worth about 300,000 BDT for our marriage. Once the rituals were over, I left for Dhaka with them, stepping into a new life full of hope. After the wedding, they brought me to their home in Old Dhaka. In the beginning, everything seemed perfectly fine. My mother-in-law welcomed me warmly into the house, but this warmth didn't even last a week. Just 3 days into my marriage, their attitude completely changed. Suddenly, they began criticizing my appearance, constantly making remarks about how I wasn't attractive enough, and questioning why I was so thin. My mother-in-law and my sister-in-law would repeatedly say right to my face that I wasn't presentable enough to be taken out in public or introduced to society. They would openly complain that they could have easily found a much more beautiful bride for their son and wondered why he had chosen me. The hardest part was that they weren't just insulting me, they were constantly feeding these thoughts into my husband's mind. At that time, my husband never protested or argued back against his family. However, perhaps to stop their non-stop nagging, just a week after our wedding, he took me to PG Hospital, one of the major public medical university hospitals in Dhaka. The sole purpose of the doctor's visit was to find out why I was so thin and why I wasn't gaining weight. Hearing constant remarks about my physical appearance and body fitness from my in-laws was becoming unbearable. But the real shock came when I realized that their constant whispering had finally started getting to my husband. Eventually, he began comparing me to other women too. He would randomly tell me how beautiful his boss's wife was, how attractive the neighbor's wife looked, or how pretty a girl named Sadia from the ground floor was. Even when I talked to my friends, he would look at them and comment, "Your friend is so beautiful. Why didn't I notice her first?" It didn't even stop there. He didn't even spare my younger sister. He straight up told me, "Why don't you just go back to your parents' house and send your younger sister here instead? She is much more beautiful than you." At first, I brushed it off, thinking he was just teasing me or making dark jokes, but he wasn't joking at all. He was entirely serious every time he said those things. I was just too naive to see his true mindset back then, so I didn't take it seriously. Then came the day I saw something that completely broke my heart. His maternal uncles were sending pictures of different women to his phone via the IMO app, looking for a new bride for him. The most agonizing part was that I, his legally wedded wife, was sitting right in front of him, and he was casually browsing through pictures of other women for a second marriage. I couldn't hold back my tears that day and cried uncontrollably. This is how the first 2 months of my marriage passed, living through constant emotional abuse, body shaming, and disrespect every single day. Unable to bear the continuous emotional abuse and disrespect day after day, I eventually packed my bags and returned to my parents' home in Mymensingh. I ended up staying there for a long time. When my family learned about the extent of what I had been going through, they were deeply worried. They began to question how I could ever build a life with this man if things were this bad right at the beginning. Out of concern for my future, they were completely unwilling to send me back. My family reached out to him and said, "Please come over to our house. Let's sit down together and figure out what went wrong. If our daughter has made a mistake, we will discipline her. And if there is any misunderstanding on your part, we want to resolve that too. A marriage cannot function like this." But he flatly refused to come, and he wouldn't even communicate with me properly. At first, I also made up my mind that if he didn't come to fetch me with respect, I would never return to Dhaka. 2 months passed this way. He never came for me, and my family remained firm on their decision not to send me back. But suddenly, an overwhelming fear gripped me. I felt that despite everything, I just needed to save my marriage at any cost. I desperately did not want the label of a divorcee attached to my name again. I begged my family and repeatedly pleaded with my father, asking him to take me back to my in-laws' house. Seeing my desperation, my father finally relented. He accompanied me back to Dhaka. Before leaving, my husband had assured me over the phone, saying, "I know my mother and sister treat you unfairly. Just come to Dhaka once and I will rent a separate apartment for us." It was solely based on this promise of a separate home that I traveled to Dhaka with a heart full of hope. But when we arrived at his house, the reality was completely different. They refused to let me inside. Right in front of my father, they bluntly said, "Take your daughter back with you. We will not let our son continue this marriage." Desperate and helpless, I fell at my mother-in-law's feet. Crying, I told her, leaving for my parents' house without asking was my mistake. "Please forgive me, and let me live with my husband." Seeing me beg, they finally allowed me inside. My father, having no other choice, left me there and returned to Mymensingh alone. The moment my father left, a new form of psychological cruelty began. My mother-in-law strictly ordered me, "You cannot sleep in the same bed with our son at night." The most devastating part was that my husband didn't utter a single word against his mother's command. He didn't even question her as to why we had to sleep separately. From then on, he slept comfortably on the bed every night, while I slept below on the floor or on the sofa. The only time he would call me to his bed was when he had physical needs. Once his needs were met, he would send me right back to the sofa. I lived through this utter humiliation for quite a few days. Then one day, I found out that he was secretly consulting a lawyer and preparing divorce papers. He was going to divorce me. When I confronted him about the reason, he calmly told me that I was no longer beautiful in his eyes. True to his toxic nature, he remarked, "Men are worshippers of beauty. You are not good enough for me. If you want, you can leave and send your younger sister instead." Hearing those words come out of his mouth made the ground slide from under my feet. I couldn't process it. This was the man I had fought my own family for, the man whose scarred past I had accepted and wanted to heal with love. And now, just a few months into the marriage, he wanted a divorce simply because I wasn't beautiful enough. Can a person's appearance ever be a valid reason to discard a marriage? We hadn't even been married for very long. It wasn't as if the marriage had grown old and withered over time. Yet, I could never comprehend why there was so much coldness and resentment towards me in his heart. I simply couldn't process it. Unable to endure it any longer, I reached out to my family again and told them everything that was happening. I begged them, "Please come and take me away from here." But at that exact moment, my maternal uncle told me something that completely shattered my spirit. He said, "There has never been a single divorce in our entire family lineage. You must stay there and make it work no matter what, even if your in-laws end up killing you. We will go there to collect your body, but do not leave that house and come back like this." Hearing that from my own family, I turned to my in-laws and begged, "Then please, either drop me off at my parents' house yourselves, or just let me leave on my own." But they refused to let me go alone either. They were terrified that if I left by myself, my family would file a police case against them. To protect themselves, they confiscated my phone. They kept it for almost 15 days, completely cutting me off from the outside world. I couldn't reach out to anyone. Trapped between the psychological abuse inside that house and the rigid stance of my own family outside, I realized one thing: if I stayed in that house any longer, the suffocation would kill me. I had to escape no matter what. Finally, on February 4th, 2024, I gathered all my courage and walked out of that house onto the street. The moment I got out, I dialed 999, Bangladesh's national emergency helpline. The police arrived promptly, rescued me from the area, and contacted my father. My father then came to Dhaka, picked me up from the police station, and brought me back to our village home in Mymensingh. Just 3 to 4 days later, an official legal document was delivered to my hands, my divorce papers. When that letter arrived, my entire family and our extended relatives broke down in tears. They wept and told me we were against this marriage from the very beginning. You stubbornly chose to go to that man, and look how he discarded you today. After everything I went through, my family wanted to take strict legal action against them and hold them accountable. But I firmly said no. I told them, do not do anything against them. I am not leaving this to human courts. I am placing this injustice directly in the hands of God. He will surely deliver justice one day. However, the furniture worth 300,000 BDT that my father had gifted us was still at their house. Later, through a court order, a legal notice was sent demanding the return of my belongings. Only then did my family go over and retrieve the furniture from their house. It has been 2.5 years since everything ended. They branded me with the label of a divorcee and walked away. But I didn't marry him out of love, just to end up with this stigma. Even after all this time, I cannot erase those memories. Every single day, I am reminded of my husband, the home I tried to build, and the dreams I cherished. To this day, I haven't been able to move on. I can never truly explain to anyone how these last 2.5 years have passed, or how agonizing the days have been. I would never wish this kind of fate upon my worst enemy. The pain of going through a divorce is something I hope no one ever has to endure. But do you know what hurts the most? Because of my one mistake, I no longer receive the same warmth, love, or respect from my own family that I used to get before this marriage. At the end of the day, I have only one thing to say. May God never forgive those whose cruel pretense and ruthlessness left this scar of divorce on my life, and because of whom I still cannot find peace even after 2.5 years. For the absolute destruction of my life, I leave their judgment entirely to God. It is hard to believe that just a few months into a marriage, a home built with so many dreams could be destroyed over a phrase as shallow as "you are no longer beautiful in my eyes." 2.5 years have passed since that storm tore through this young woman's life, but the internal scars remain unhealed. To this day, she fights a quiet battle with isolation, while bearing a stigma she never deserved. This chapter from our diaries leaves us with a painful truth sometimes. Pure innocence and blind faith can lead a person down the darkest of paths. How did this true story impact you today? Please share your thoughts with us in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, leave a like. And subscribe to True Love Diaries for more real-life stories of human relationships. Have a story of love, survival, heartbreak, or raw resilience to share with the world? Send it to our email address in the description below. Until next time, take care of yourselves and hold the people around you a little closer. Thank you.